Some dogs punch a clock, not metaphorically. Not in the loose way people say a thing when they mean something approximate. Actually punch a clock. Show up at the same corner at the same time every single morning with the same focused purpose that most humans spend their entire careers trying to find. Atlas was that kind of dog. He was a 4-year-old golden retriever working out of the Denver Police Department's Community Assistance K-9 program. 73 pounds of amber-coated reliability that had turned the intersection of Colfax Avenue and Broadway into his personal office for the past 2 years. His job was not narcotics, not tracking, not the kind of dramatic police work that ends up on the evening news.
Thank you.
His job was the crosswalk, specifically the crosswalk at Colfax and Broadway, one of the busiest intersections in the state of Colorado. A place where 6 lanes of urban traffic met twice a day in a particular organized chaos that swallowed careful-sighted people whole and turned the world of a visually impaired pedestrian into something resembling a very bad dream with horns. Atlas showed up at 7:15 every morning without fail. His handler, Officer Maria Santos, would arrive with him in the patrol unit. Atlas would hop out, shake once from nose to tail, the way golden retrievers shake off the world, and go to work. He would position himself at the northwest corner, and he would wait. And when a person with a white cane or a guide dog, or simply the particular careful stance of someone who could not fully see the traffic moving in front of them, arrived at his corner, Atlas would do what he had been trained to do. He would guide them across, not dramatically, not with fanfare. He would press gently against their left side, match their pace, and navigate them through 38 feet of painted asphalt that separated them from the other side like a river separating two worlds. 38 feet. Atlas had crossed those 38 feet approximately 940 times in 2 years. He had guided retired teachers and college students and a man named Gerald, who crossed every Tuesday to get to his dialysis appointment and who always had a piece of string cheese in his jacket pocket that he had learned was Atlas's specific weakness. Atlas never once in 940 crossings hesitated at the painted line. He was the most reliable thing about that intersection. More reliable than the traffic signals, which had a documented tendency to malfunction in heavy rain. More reliable than the crossing guard who called in sick 17 times in the last calendar year. More reliable than the entire mechanical and bureaucratic apparatus of urban traffic management that the city of Denver spent considerable resources maintaining. He was a 73-pound golden dog who showed up every morning like the world depended on it, because for some people at that corner, it did. Eleanor Marsh was 78 years old and had been crossing Colfax and Broadway every Tuesday and Thursday morning for 11 years. She had been doing it for 3 years before Atlas arrived, and she would tell you with the particular candor of a woman who had survived enough to be honest about things that those first 3 years were the hardest 38 feet she had ever walked. Traffic in Denver did not wait for Eleanor Marsh. Traffic in Denver did not notice Eleanor Marsh. Traffic in Denver was a living creature with no patience and no peripheral vision, and an absolute commitment to its own timeline that left very little room for a 78-year-old woman navigating a crosswalk with a white cane and the particular careful courage of someone who refuses to let blindness turn into confinement. Then Atlas arrived. Eleanor would tell you that the first morning Atlas guided her across Colfax Avenue, she felt something she had not felt at that intersection in 3 years. She felt like she was not alone. Not in the general human sense of not being alone, in the specific animal sense of a being pressing warmly against your left side and saying with its entire body, I have got you. I know where the curve is. I know when the signal changes. I know which direction the cars are coming from. Trust me. She trusted him. 11 regulars crossed with Atlas every week. Eleanor on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Gerald with his string cheese on Tuesdays. A young woman named Priya who was 26 years old and had lost her sight in a car accident 2 years before Atlas arrived, and who would tell you that her first crossing with Atlas was the first time since the accident that she had crossed a street without her hands shaking. A retired firefighter named Hank, who had lost his sight to macular degeneration at 67, and who crossed every morning purely out of principle because he refused, in his words, to let his eyes tell him where he could and could not go. They were Atlas's people. He did not know their names. He did not understand their histories. He did not know about Gerald's dialysis or Priya's accident or Hank's particular brand of stubborn courage. But he knew their gaits. He knew how each of them arrived at the corner and how each of them moved, and what each of them needed from the 38 feet between one sidewalk and the other. He was fluent in a language that had no words. The morning of October 14th was a Tuesday. Maria Santos arrived at the northwest corner of Colfax and Broadway at 7:13 a.m. She opened the rear door of the patrol unit. She waited. Atlas did not jump out. This was not something that had ever happened before. In 2 years of arriving at this corner, Atlas had exited that patrol unit with the enthusiasm of someone who had been looking forward to this moment since the alarm went off. The door opened and Atlas was out before it was fully open, shaking himself awake, orienting to the corner, ready. On October 14th, Atlas was not in the patrol unit. Maria stood at the open rear door and looked at the empty space where Atlas had been sitting 12 minutes earlier when she left the K-9 facility. She looked at the undisturbed rear seat. She looked at the secured kennel door, which was closed but not latched in the specific way she had left it. Someone had opened the kennel door between the facility and Colfax Avenue. In 12 minutes of city driving, Maria Santos had been a police officer for 14 years. She had responded to things that would make most people permanently reconsider their relationship with the city they lived in. She was not a woman who panicked easily or often. She panicked now. She keyed her radio at 7:14 a.m. and said the words that turned the Denver Police Department's Tuesday morning inside out. She said Atlas was missing. The city of Denver did not take this quietly. By 9 a.m., the department had units running grid patterns through the 6-block radius around the facility route. By 10 a.m., the story had broken on local radio. By 11 a.m., it was on the morning news with a photograph of Atlas at the crosswalk that a local journalist had taken 3 months earlier, and that showed Atlas in the specific moment of guiding Eleanor Marsh across Colfax Avenue, her white cane in her right hand, Atlas pressed against her left side, both of them moving with the calm, purposeful dignity of beings who understood exactly what they were doing. The photograph broke something open in Denver. It spread the way things spread in the age of sharing. Not like a news story spreads, like something personal spreads, like something that belongs to people spreads when they realize it belongs to them. By noon, it had been shared 40,000 times. By evening, it had been shared 250,000 times. Eleanor Marsh heard about Atlas on the radio at 9:15. She sat at her apartment on Lincoln Street 3 blocks from the crosswalk with the radio on and her white cane leaning against the chair beside her, and she did not say anything for a long time. Gerald heard about it when his dialysis nurse mentioned it at his Tuesday appointment. He reached into his jacket pocket automatically and touched the piece of string cheese he had brought, as he always brought on Tuesdays, and he sat with that information for a moment without speaking. Priya saw it on her phone at her desk at work, through her screen reader. She read it twice. Then she put the phone face down on her desk and stared at the wall. Hank heard nothing because Hank was already at the corner. He had arrived at 7:20 and found Maria Santos standing at the empty patrol unit and had understood from her face, before she said a word, that something was wrong. He stood at the corner for 40 minutes while Maria worked the radio and the morning traffic moved through the intersection without pause, and nobody guided anyone across 38 feet of painted asphalt, because the 73-pound golden dog who had made that crossing his life's work was somewhere in Denver that nobody could find. Hank stood at that corner, and he thought about every morning he had crossed it with Atlas, and he thought about what it meant to have something reliable taken away without warning. And he said nothing, because there was nothing to say that the morning had not already said. They found Atlas at 2:17 in the afternoon. Not through the grid search. Not through the tip line that the department had set up by 10 a.m. and that had received 312 calls by the time Atlas was found. Not through any of the organized professional apparatus that the Denver Police Department had deployed across 6 square miles of urban Colorado. They found him because a 7-year-old girl named Cora, who lived 4 blocks from the K-9 facility on a street called Maple Avenue, came home from school at 2:15 and found a golden retriever sitting on her front porch. Cora was not afraid of dogs. Cora was afraid of very little. She stood on the sidewalk and looked at the dog on her porch and said, "Are you Atlas?" And the dog wagged his tail once, and Cora went inside and told her mother, who called the number on the news. Atlas was on the porch of a house 4 blocks from the facility. He had been sitting there, the neighbor across the street reported, since approximately 9 in the morning. Sitting upright, watching the street, not anxious, not destructive, just present. The house on Maple Avenue belonged to a woman named Ruth Delaney. Ruth Delaney was 81 years old. She was visually impaired. She had moved to Denver 6 weeks earlier from Portland, Oregon, to be closer to her daughter after her husband of 53 years had died in August. She had not yet learned the city. She had not yet found the crosswalks. She had not yet found Atlas's Corner. She had been sitting in her house for 6 weeks, not knowing that 4 blocks away, there was a dog whose entire professional identity was built around making sure people like her could cross the street. And somehow, in a way that the Denver Police Department's lead canine trainer spent a significant amount of time trying to explain to a room full of people who were not sure they believed it, Atlas had found her first. The trainer's name was Sergeant Dave Okafor. He stood in the debrief room the following morning and walked through every possible explanation for how Atlas had exited a secured kennel in a moving vehicle, navigated 4 blocks of Denver city grid, and arrived at the front porch of a visually impaired woman he had never met. He went through all of them. Then he stopped talking for a moment. Then he said something that nobody in that room argued with. He said the kennel latch was a model that required a specific upward pressure and lateral pull to open. He said Atlas had demonstrated this capability in training 18 months earlier and had not been considered a flight risk because he had shown no inclination to use it outside of training. He said the route from the facility to Maple Avenue was a straight line broken by 2 turns that Atlas had traveled many times in the patrol unit. He said visually impaired individuals produce specific scent markers related to the particular stress chemistry of navigating unfamiliar environments. He said Atlas followed a scent trail to a house where someone needed what he knew how to give. He said it as a fact, not as a miracle, not as a mystery, as a fact about what dogs do when they are built for something and they encounter someone who needs that thing. He said the dog did his job. He just did it off the clock. Ruth Delaney crossed Colfax and Broadway for the first time on a Thursday morning 3 weeks after Atlas arrived on her porch. Atlas guided her across at 7:22 a.m. She was the 12th person he had guided that morning. She crossed in the same 38 feet as everyone else. Atlas pressed against her left side the same way he pressed against Eleanor's and Gerald's and Priya's and Hank's, unhurried, certain, warm. When they reached the other side, Ruth Delaney stopped and put her hand down and found Atlas's head and held it for a moment. She said thank you. Atlas wagged once. Then he turned back to the corner because there was someone else waiting. There was always someone else waiting. That was the thing about Atlas that the city of Denver understood a little better after October 14th. He was not remarkable because he was exceptional. He was not remarkable because he did something no other dog could do, or because his story was improbable, or because a photograph of him had spread across the internet like a warm hand reaching across a cold room. He was remarkable because he showed up every morning. Same corner, same 38 feet, same amber coat in the early light of a Colorado morning, same warm weight against the left side of someone who needed to know they were not crossing alone. He was remarkable because he understood, in whatever wordless way a 73-pound golden dog understands things, that reliability is its own form of love, that showing up is its own form of bravery, that the 38 feet between one sidewalk and the other is not really about the distance. It never was. It was about who walks with you.